Okay, it's time for a bit of real talk. As part of my ongoing efforts to make sure I'm creating content that actually provides value to your life, something that provides entertainment and causes you to think a bit, I have been going back through some of the videos I've published to date, and, well, they're all sort of negative. At least the Star Wars specific content is anyway. Out of 5 videos that I've posted, 4 of them are sort of complaining about or directly criticizing the lore of Star Wars. Now, that wasn't really my intention when I started this channel. I wanted to have fun talking about topics that I find interesting, and while I enjoyed making the videos that I've posted and had fun seeing the engagement in the comments from our small but growing community here, I do want to start being a little more positive and acknowledging the good aspects of Star Wars where they can be found. And if we can still complain about the bad bits in the process, hopefully we can create something that everyone can find enjoyment in. That's why today, instead of just whining about how bad the Book of Boba Fett was, I figured it would be good fun to list 5 things Disney could have done to fix the Book of Boba Fett. If that sounds like fun to you, then settle into your throne and make sure the Rancor's food bowl is full as we start with number 1. So let's be clear here. The Din Djarin story arc where he wields the Darksaber, becomes an apostate, does a Fast and Furious montage of building a Hot Rod N1 starfighter, and then makes the heartbreaking decision to abandon Grogu for his own good, it's actually pretty good. The problem is, this isn't The Mandalorian Season 3, it's the Book of Boba Fett. People came here to see Fett, not Mando. Now these items shouldn't be removed from the Star Wars universe. Otherwise, that whole scene in the beginning of Mando Season 3 where Din saves the children of the Watch with his sweet new ride and baby Goopy Boo is once again riding with him, well, it would have been jarring, and fans would have been pretty irked by the obvious fake out of ending Mando Season 2 with Luke taking Grogu away to become a Jedi. So instead, these 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett that focus almost entirely on Din Djarin should have just been pushed to the front of Mandalorian Season 3. This solves the issue with continuity caused by Mando upgrading to the premium pay-to-win subscription and keeps the Book of Boba Fett centered on Boba. Now you don't have to remove Mando entirely. You can still have the little bit where Fennec recruits him and he takes the job gratis. He talks to Cobb Vanth, his participation in the Battle of Mos Espa, all of that is perfectly fine. Okay, it's acceptable and tolerable at the very least. During Mandalorian Season 2, Mando and Fett did develop a decent working relationship and respectful rapport with one another, and it's understandable that he would have reached out to Mando, either convincing him to help out of a sense of honor or for the simple matter of payment. Fett should have been gathering allies, and including Mando would serve that purpose. We just don't need all of the Mando backstory. Probably the most difficult element of the book's narrative style to work around is the nonlinear storytelling. Now, nonlinear storytelling is supposed to be somewhat jarring. It keeps the audience from growing bored and makes the story unpredictable. But in the Book of Boba Fett, the story is broken between past and present through the use of Boba's Bacta tank. Now, I have some very specific points about the Bacta tank itself and why it's bad, so I'll skim past that for the moment. But let's look at the Book of Boba Fett and how many individual storylines it has, ignoring the Din Djarin arc that we already talked about. There's the Boba Fett being abducted by the Tuskens and earning his place among the tribe. There's Boba saving Fennec and taking back Slave 1. There's Boba taking his place as Daimyo. There's the challenge to his authority and gathering allies. And there's the Battle of Mos Espa. So I think probably the best decision here would be to de-link all of these stories and have them all stand on their own as a series of short stories. Each one should be a self-contained narrative, a self-contained framework, and a self-contained resolution. The new episode 1 should be Fennec and Boba's meeting, him saving her life, them stealing Slave 1 from Bib Fortuna, destroying the bikers, and going on to find his family armor. The next episode in this new structure should be Boba Fett starting day 1 as Daimyo. He busies himself with accepting tribute, touring his new domain, fighting off assassins, tracking down their employer, getting the runaround from the mayor, and the bait and switch with the twins. In the 3rd episode, we break with the present and view a chapter from Boba's past again. Boba escaping the Sarlacc pit, being abducted, winning his freedom, teaching the Tuskens to fight the Pikes, earning his place, and laying them to rest. The 4th episode can return us to the present and address the challenge to Fett's authority, Chris Santin's attack on Fett, the twins abandoning Tatooine, the meeting with the heads of the families, the reveal that the Pikes are behind it and the mayor is in league with them, finishing with the gathering of allies. The sanctuary is bombed and the stage is set for the final showdown. The final episode can more or less transpire as we see it, the Battle of Mos Espa, and an epilogue to each of the previous stories. the Tuskens avenged, the challenge to Fett's authority squashed, and Fett finally free to rest on his laurels and settle in for his golden years. The Book of Boba Fett actually reading like the chapters in a book, with each chapter telling a different story, not only fixes many of the narrative missteps from the series, but opens up the possibility of additional seasons, new prequel chapters, more sequel chapters, each able to be told more or less side by side while convincingly expanding the lore, developing Fett's character, and giving fans what they actually want. So I said I would have some points on why the Bacta tanks are bad, and I aim to deliver, starting with the lore aspects. Bacta is a bacterial sludge type substance that speeds up and increases your body's ability to heal itself. It's not some miracle substance that somehow brings people back from the dead, extends their life, or somehow has the ability to reconfigure scar tissue and erase scars. Scars, if you don't know, are the end result of your body's own attempt to heal you. It's the result of healing that has already taken place. I'm sorry, but sleeping in a Bacta tank is not going to make all of Boba's scars go away. Pretty much nothing short of cosmetic surgery is going to work. Now, if Fett had surgery then slept in a Bacta tank, that might get rid of most of his scars, but the Bacta by itself does nothing. But beyond the lore aspects of Bacta misuse, it's also a bad narrative choice. First, it forces Boba Fett to be in a specific location in a specific frame of mind in order for the story to progress. Now, this is generally not an issue, but in a story that doesn't take place aboard a ship or on a desert island, it just breaks the pacing. Why does Boba Fett only think about the Tuskens while he's dreaming in the Bacta tank? Why does he have to be sleeping in goo for us to transition from the present to the past? And why does that goo have to be confined to his quarters? Imagine if in Star Trek the captain had to return to their quarters each time they needed to do a flashback. It forces the story to completely relieve all stress and tension before you're able to move on to a different scene. It's just bad for pacing, and as a plot device, it sucks. So here's a simple fix. Let Boba be introspective. We are, after all, looking at a main storyline whose theme is personal growth over time and maturity born of experience. Part of maturity is meditating on the experiences of your past and using them to put lessons learned into practice. So rather than Fett being unconscious every time he remembers his time with the Tuskens or his past with Fennec, just have him sit down for a while and remember on his own. It's better for his character anyway. Sure, he can use the Bacta tank. It would just be another way to flaunt the wealth that he has taken by force, but short of using it in the wake of getting actual surgery to take care of his acid burns and as part of a larger on-site medical facility, it really serves no narrative benefit. That really should be it for the Bacta tank subplot. It's there, it's an option if he gets wounded in combat, but it's not a required plot device any longer. I'll admit that writing a strong plot is difficult, but something that's fairly easy is concentrating fire on the like button. Viewer engagement is a metric we use to determine the sort of content that provides the most value to you, a random person on the internet who has the power to choose whether I can afford the payments on my slightly used speeder this month. Please, thank you, and now on with our list. I'll admit I'm not super in love with the Clone Wars TV show. I appreciate the lore building that it brings to the table, but I guess I'm just at a point in my life where I just don't like to consume cartoons as much as I used to. But even I moved to the edge of my seat and got beyond mildly excited when I saw Cad Bane walking slowly into Freetown for the first time, and knew enough of the Clone Wars lore and story to know that this was probably not going to end well. Bane did not fail to deliver on that promise. Cobb Vanth was probably my favorite character introduced in Mandalorian Season 2. Okay, he was the only new character introduced in Mandalorian Season 2, but Timothy Olyphant really brought his character to life. So I was bummed that he was killed off. I mean, Bane's reputation pretty much demands that if guns were drawn, he would come out on top every time. Although it's cut content, he is responsible for that dent in Boba's helmet that he refuses to get hammered out, even though he patched and painted all the other dings and dents and such. But here's the problem. Cobb Vanth isn't dead because Disney has a series already lined up that's supposed to center on the various marshals that we've seen in The Mandalorian, and since Gina Carano made the mistake of saying stupid stuff on social media and got fired by Disney because actors aren't allowed to be flawed and fallible humans with their own beliefs and opinions anymore, that pretty much leaves Vanth to be the show's headliner. At least he was before they brought back IG-11, which is a whole other can of worms but largely fits into the same vein. If you have no intention of killing off a character, don't act like you're killing them off just for the cheap emotional response from your audience, only to tease the fact that they're actually going to be alive and well after all in a teaser cliffhanger ending. If you do kill off a character, have the courage and integrity to find a way to work in their absence instead of shoehorning in a resurrection subplot. The thing is, Vanth didn't have to die as a result of his run-in with Bane. They could have just had Bane sounding all ominous, making his threats, and when it became obvious that Vanth wouldn't back down, place Freetown under siege with pike troops. During the battle with Mos Espa, a large group of the townspeople could break through the siege with their hover tank and participate in the Battle of Mos Espa in more or less the same way, while Vanth continues to fight off the remaining pike troops that have him surrounded in Freetown. It gives him a valid reason for not coming to Fett's aid, and Bane can still make his backhanded tease that the people of Freetown aren't coming to Fett's aid, and the wheels can keep turning without the cheap, "Oh no, Cobb's dead. Wait, just kidding." So here's the deal, Boba Fett is a character who has a cult following among OG Star Wars fans. Quamara Morrison is an actor whose portrayal of Jango Fett and all Fett clones, including Boba, developed a cult following from the prequel generation of fans. So the Book of Boba Fett, a series about an aging Boba Fett trying to settle into a life that won't get him killed, well, it's pretty clear that the target audience here is Star Wars fans in their mid to late 30s to their 60s. People who care about the character and the struggles he's undergoing due largely in part to his age. So why is so much emphasis placed on the mods, a group of street youths who look like what every middle school aged child in America strives to be? I'm not even joking, walk into pretty much any middle school and junior high in America and I will guarantee that it'll take you less than 2 minutes to find a kid that dresses, dyes and wears their hair and pretty much looks like a cosplayer of these characters, which is pretty convenient because unless you're a student at that school or have a kid that goes there, you're probably going to get kicked out in 2 minutes anyway. But the point is, why is this group used as such an integral part of the plot when they are a very obvious and transparent attempt to get teens and preteens to watch a series whose entire premise is based around midlife crisis and using lessons learned throughout a lifetime of experience? It's extremely difficult for members of that demographic to identify with the plot and the rest of the characters. The mods are simply a group that really has no place in the narrative, and their hover Vespa chase scenes, spinny twirly fight scenes, and Nickelodeon style acting, looking at you pursed lips to convey indifference, simply don't speak to adult audiences. The funny thing is that a group like the mods very well could have been a welcome addition to Fett's cadre, people who have been displaced by the greedy, who have resorted to crime because they have no alternative. We didn't need angsty hipster emo teens, but we could have used people with the same life circumstances and motivations. But as it is, these kids have virtually no marketable skills other than street smarts, so almost any group could have been inserted into their place and accomplished the same task. So either we needed a group that was more easily identified with by the target audience and more distinct from the background, or the story simply didn't need them to begin with. But now I'm interested in what y'all think. Would any of these changes be enough for you to go back in for a rewatch? I'm actually sort of tempted to try editing the Book of Boba Fett into a short story format and cut out a lot of the irrelevant bits, but naturally that undertaking would be copyright struck in a hot minute here on YouTube, so I'd have to make it like a Patreon exclusive. Now I technically have a Patreon presence, but it was set up for my gaming channel and I deactivated it due to a complete lack of patrons. So I think I have a workable platform to build off of. So if you're interested in seeing a Gray's edit of the Book of Boba Fett, please let me know. It might make for a nice side project. With all that said, I'm Gray, you've been watching Gray Galaxies, and may the Force be with you always.